Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Lessons Learned podcast with co-host Chapelmon. We were just talking about the first piece of news we want to talk about today, which is that the Epic Store is got a couple more exclusives, including the Outer Worlds. I will tell you from where is it? I had it. I had it queued up here. Oh yeah, PC Gamer. PC Gamer is announcing that The Outer Worlds and Control will launch on Epic Store, not Steam. Epic will distribute Control, The Outer Worlds, The Sinking City, and After Party, and Industries of Titan. They're getting a good lineup there. The thing about everybody was, everybody remember we talked about how supposedly Outer Worlds were taking pot shots at Bethesda and Fallout, and the designer said, "No, we don't want the comparisons." Blah blah blah. But they were still doing it. Apparently, somebody didn't told the ad people to not do that. So, when you say from the people who originally made Fallout, that's a little more than showing your credentials. So
Yeah.
so according to this, it will be yet another 1 year exclusivity deal. They were announcing during GDC, which is going right now. During GDC 2009 Unreal keynote this morning, Epic announced that it was GDC is becoming like now like the new E3 or parallel E3. Because we're gonna have a lot of news from GDC. Epic announced that it was partnered with 2K Private Division label to distribute The Outer Worlds and Ancestors: The Humankind Odyssey on Epic Games Store. PC Gamer has learned that The Outer Worlds will be released on Microsoft Store, but will not appear in other stores or on PC for at least a year. That includes Steam. So to all those people who are steamed about Epic stealing some good games out there, yeah, this is another one. I'm gonna put the link so you can see it. This is from PC Gamer. Let's just put it in that chat.
Oh, it'll be on the Microsoft Store too.
Yeah, the one that nobody actually uses. Not even.
Yeah, but I guess I'd rather use the Microsoft Store than Twitch or
Yeah.
not Twitch.
You had a problem with the Epic Store, didn't you?
The Epic Store. Yeah, so I should probably talk about that.
Yeah.
So the other day I was thinking about, hey, this Epic Store thing might get big. I should probably make an account for it just in case I ever want one in the future and have claim my username and stuff, because believe it or not, people take Chopomon. I prefer Chopomon. My alternative is Chopomon_Aragon because it's usually taken by some other person, whatever. But so I went and made went to try to make an account, and it tells me that, first off, username's used, so change that. And it's like, oh, you already have an account registered with this email address. I'm like, no, I never made one. I looked at my emails, like there's no email from Epic Store game support, whatever, at all. So I'm like, well, let's see what happens if I try recovering my password. Recovered it. I got a thing for recovering the password. Recovered it with no issue, and there's an account linked to my email address. And I found out, I tried making a second. I'm like, okay, so I'm curious to see if it doesn't require you to verify your email before creating an account, because you did mention maybe your account was hacked or something, my email account, and somebody made this account using my email address and confirming and whatnot. So I tried making a one using a secondary email. That secondary email had an account tied to it. So then I tried using a third email. This one didn't have one tied to it. And by the way, all three of these emails have different domains. Well, except the last two, they share a domain. So I made one, and sure enough, making an Epic Store game account does not require you to verify your email address before you can use the account. And my husband checked, and his email has an Epic Store account. The usernames are randomly generate numbers and letters, and for mine, all the accounts had Amy, so Annie as the user, the name and stuff. And that it was so weird. There's no purchases or anything on it, but I don't understand why. Well, first off, why you wouldn't verify your email address. There is a notice the first time you log in and look at your account information. It says you should verify your email address. Like, click here to send an email, but you can click the box and it never bothers you again to say you should verify your email address. So I don't understand again, why you don't have the security feature of, because clearly somebody's making bots and making accounts using real email addresses. For what purpose? I don't understand. And it seems very dubious, though, either way. And especially on Epic's part, that they don't take a security measure, a simple security measure, like making sure that you verify your email address before you can even use an account.
I mean, Steam is always bothering me about, hey, is this your email account? Yes, check.
Yeah.
Check and we should have a second verification, like a phone number. If you become an affiliate or a partner with Twitch, you gotta have second tier verification. I mean, a lot of places do that, and yet here Epic is not doing that. And Team 20 basically has been saying, oh well, these are things that we're gonna implement eventually, blah 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 blah. But yeah, he's sounding more like Gabe Newell every day. Talking about Gabe Newell in the PR that, and I want to add this. This is not something so much in the news. Extra Credit did a video, I think it was last week. I think after we had our podcast, and when they talk about that, about Team 20, which is the president of Epic Store, right? And saying, oh, basically, hey, listen. Look at all the money. No, not look at all the money, but look at where your money's going on. It's all about environmental causes and buying private property so that it doesn't get developed. Some very good causes. But I was like, I don't think Team 20 needs the propaganda from Extra Credits of all people. Right? I mean, I find that a little bit dubious, right? And I think he really wants to be the next Gabe Newell. I think that's the thing. I don't know if it was prompted by him. The video doesn't say it was sponsored. In fact, it seemed to hint that they did the research and did the research and what have you, and found this out, and that it wasn't Epic and or Team 20 who said, hey, by the way, Extra Credits, would you like to make a video about me or us and what we do? But I still found it dubious. I found it questionable. So I just wanted to mention that.
I don't know. Like, Extra Credits for me, they're hit and miss. I don't subscribe to them because sometimes I enjoy their content. Sometimes I don't quite agree with their content. Sometimes I'll watch a video that if it seems interesting to me, but I don't particularly support their channel all the way.
Yeah. Let's be on some talks about James Partnow, I think. I don't want to mess it up. And some controversy around former employees, female employees of that work with Extra Credits, and accusations of sexual harassment. So there's that. So let's say that we don't discuss those items as well, because that's a thing that's out there. You can research it yourself. Switching a little bit about other news. Apparently, according to PC Gamer, Lucas Games has been unexpectedly resurrected by Disney. We talked a lot about that. We even did an entire thing about EA and talked a lot about the Star Wars franchise. There's an important update. I'm going to read it. While the Disney career listings are all publisher side jobs, it looks like Lucasfilm Games has all been looking for designers as far as back as 2017. Disney was advertising for technical artist, engineer manager, producer, community manager, and lead game designer on LinkedIn. A screenshot which was shared by Team 17 community manager Ashley Day, suggesting the new games, at least then, were being considered. This comes in the heels, of course, of all the criticism about the EA Disney alliance publishing deal, right? And that Disney has publicly said that they are not interested in, severing those ties anytime soon. That could also be translated as like we can't sever those ties anytime soon. It depends on how the deal is worked, in that the EA might be responsible for publishing a Star Wars video game or video games every year or so, but they're not. They don't have exclusivity of distribution. Or exclusion of not exclusivity of distribution. Probably they do have exclusivity of distribution, right? They're a publisher after all, but they may not have exclusivity of creation, which means that if Disney is reviving LucasArts as a publisher, and by the way, LucasArts had a lot of titles on their belt, not just Star Wars, but of course it's LucasArts, Lucasfilms, George Lucas, Lucas Star Wars, right? They might be creating their own stuff, and that would be very interesting to have two parallel developers slash publishers out there on the Star Wars rubric.
So that's kind of interesting. It's like maybe Disney set the thing that they're satisfied with, like their partnership with EA, to kind of save face, but it's like, we're gonna revive LucasArts.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. It's, actions speak louder than words, so it makes me wonder if they're not really all that confident. It's like, let's have a trump card set up.
Yeah, and so that I found that very interesting. On something of a sad note, and this was on last Friday's. This is reported by Kotaku. Dwarf Fortress is coming to Steam because the developer needs healthcare. That's the headline. So let's dig into it. According to Adams, Ton Adams, who is co-creator of Dwarf Fortress, we both don't know. Dwarf Fortress is a very complex ASCII-style management game about dwarves in a fortress. Very popular, been for years. It's him and his brother Zach released Dwarf Fortress in 2006 after 4 years of development. It's an expansive, intoxicating game where you corral a party of dwarves and create an underground colony for them, protecting them from various dangers along the way. According to Adams, healthcare costs and they are pretty much the whole reason. We've been doing fine with crowdfunding, but we're getting older now. One health problem that lands us in the wrong deductible or copay situation will be and a full-time work on the game, which highlights again, I think, the problems that plague the industry, especially on the developer side. And we were talking about how you get to pay for games last week, and having somebody pay the checks and guaranteeing that you have health care, well, as long as you have a job, is a thing that you have to worry about. So that's just a sort of a note on what you might be thinking about. A game that we talked about, especially you, Chapo, want to talk about, System Shock remake video shows a full run through of the medical level. That's according to VG 24/7. There's a new video has been released, of pre-alpha gameplay footage of the System Shock remake. So it's still alive, still going, even after a brief hiatus.
So like from what I've heard before, the System Shock is one of those. The Kickstarter is one of those that kind of got too big for its britches, and what happens when you give them too much money, they got a lot of support way past their goals, and that's when they started like, well, maybe we could put this in the game, and let's do this instead, and kind of started veering way too far from their original vision of restoring the original System Shock as it was in just like in a modern day engine. And I believe they said they were going to take a brief hiatus. So they're going to, we're veering too far. They recognize that. We're going to take a little hiatus and gather up everything and maybe start from scratch back to our original vision. So it's good to see that they're still working on it instead of, fading away into obscurity and then ending up on one of those kick scammer videos on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean,
never produce a product, but I guess we'll have to see whether. I guess it's a little too early to say that they won't, because they got to put out a product first, and it's got to be at least somewhat decent.
In other news, Nintendo. There's a couple of news about new games, and now that we're getting closer and closer to E3 2019, you get more and more news about gaming's upcoming games. During the Nintendo Switch Indies is announcing new games, but I don't have the list yet, so that we will be looking up to that. But Konami is rehashing old games. Castlevania, Contra, and Konami Arcade Anniversary Collections officially announced. Konami celebrating its 50th anniversary with 3 of announcements. Arcade Anniversary Collection includes Haunted Castle, Typhoon, Ajax, I think United States, Nemesis, Gradius in the United States, Vulcan Venture, Gradius 2 in the United States, Salamander, Thundercross, Scramble, Twinbee, and Castlevania Anniversary Collection. And there's more to come. This is, I guess I'll try Castlevania if it comes to PC. I doubt it very much. The other games are just, I played Gradius. I remember Gradius, Ajax, right? Contra.
So, the only Konami game that I don't think they made it. I think they just published it. That I would probably like to play like on a modern console or just for novelty's sake is like Zombies Ate My Neighbors. But so this is something that I probably complained about a lot on the show. It's just like, it's like remakes and re-releases are fine, but it's like, when is it like too much too? When that's all you ever get for new consoles? Like it's something kind of that I fear about the PlayStation 5 or when we hit this next generation, this upcoming generation. It's like, that's what we're going to see. Is like, hey, want to play the Spyro Reignited Edition thing, the re-release of it on PlayStation 5 or something like that.
Yeah, the dark side of basically backwards compatibility is that
Yeah.
you can't really make them backwards compatible for everything, but you can re-release the games and sell them again.
Yeah.
This collection will be sold for $20, and it will be on PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch.
So I wonder if that's just like Konami just trying to let's make a quick buck kind of thing. I guess it's gonna.
Welcome, Night Lover. Thank you for the follow. Yeah, it's a thing. Let me see.
Oh, hello.
How you doing,
Dr. Egg?
Dr. Eggman. Yeah, that's I think that's comment on the fact that you have your shortcut.
My glasses.
Yeah, haircut. It's $20, and again, this I think one of the reasons why they were, especially Japanese companies were waging a war on emulation, because most of these games you can emulate them, right? But if you go after the emulators and they're not available, then you can resell them every couple of years for 10, 20, 30, 50, whatever many dollars you think they can get away with. So,
and again, like this I think we'll have to see the quality of like what this really release is. I believe like there was a Sega one not too long ago. I want to say a year ago that it felt cheap and it felt crappy and like the games didn't run very well. It seemed like it was poorly optimized and just kind of slapdash together.
Yeah.
Try to make a quick buck, maybe, especially since we haven't seen like a Sega talking about like say jumping on board on the mini consoles re-releases. Like we haven't seen any news for like a Sega Classic, a mini classic or something. So I'm wondering if that back then that probably would have been their attempt to try to cash in on nostalgia. I don't know about Konami. Like it feels a little bit late for that.
Yeah. Talking about sales, according to the NPD Group, and this is from again VG247, Anthem is actually doing very well for its release. Anthem was the best-selling game of February, pushing it to the second best game selling game in 2019 so far, which is okay, I suppose. Anthem launched also second biggest BioWare history. This is important in terms of sales, behind Mass Effect 3. For those who were fearing that Anthem might in fact become a
bomb,
or that in fact might be successful and therefore
More of that, please.
Yeah, more of that. Yeah, well, at least they're making bank on it, sales
Mm,
wise. We'll see if it has legs coming next year, especially with other big, games as service. It hasn't beaten Apex Legends when it comes to downloads, of course, but it is what it is. And of course, talking about Apex Legends, Apex Legends has battle passes because, of course, it does. It's a free-to-play game. Why wouldn't have it? Like Fortnite, and I'm reading from this is from GameSpot, of all places. Like Fortnite, PUBG, and other battle royale games. Epic will also offer a paid battle packs every season, to which players will be able to unlock new skins and rewards. The first battle pass live on PS4, Xbox One, and PC as part of a new patch, and coincidentally costs exactly the same as Fortnite, right down to the ability to get a head start and earn back what you pay for. I never liked the idea of the battle pass because it's time sensitive. I actually never understood it. Let me see what the explanation or battle pass is. And there's to me some complaints that what you get in that battle pass are not that great to begin with anyway. So it's like the skins are not really new. Oops, sorry about that. That was a video kicking in. So it's like, yeah. Oh well.
well, I don't have a leg in it, but it it probably sounds like it's like monetization for monetization's sake.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I kind of hate to say it, but it's like I guess you can give it a pass because it's a free to play game. Like it'd be more upsetting if Apex Legends was something you had to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Like I don't. This is usually why I just prefer to steer clear of these kind of games that start kind of doing monetization and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just I'd rather not bother with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's more the same. And I played Apex, like I said, and wasn't for me. So I'm gonna give it a pass when it comes to battle passes. But it's something you keep an eye on, and I think you're gonna see more of that. Paradox seems to be teasing a possible, and this is a tease, Vampire the Masquerade reveal on March 21st.
Really?
Paradox and Tactical finally announced a new Vampire the Masquerade game. This is just a teaser. This is just speculation, so I put it that way. On GDC 2019, over at Weekend Paradox and tweeted exterior images that which could be a new Vampire the Masquerade title. Something big happening on the 21st. Tender firms dating app. Okay, so I mean, there's some pictures, but it could be anything.
Yeah.
Vampire. For people who don't know, Vampire the Masquerade was a big game, especially in the 1990s, tabletop RPG about playing vampires, especially. And it got a game in the 1990s, I think in the 2000s as well. Even got a TV series, but it's something that it's never got as mainstream as Dungeons and Dragons.
From my understanding, it's like the Vampires Masquerade video game has like a cult following to it, and it's not very good, but it has like potential, and especially since it has like a lot of tabletop RPG mechanics into it.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's my understanding from it. I've seen some reviews and people talking about the game. It seems interesting, but it doesn't seem like it's something I would like to play, particularly because I'm not all that fond of vampires myself. I'm more of a werewolves kind of guy, and even then, I think werewolves are rather overrated as well.
Talking about going back a little bit onto Anthem, because I skipped this. According to PC Gamer, and this is their take on it, the Art of Anthem reveals a trap storyline that could have changed everything. Even though it's doing very well, apparently it had a completely different storyline. Something about Robinson Crusoe style struggle against the odds as you crew salvage modules into houses, ramshackle bars, and outposts. An entire settlement is being seen up sprung around the carcass of the ship and later concept art, and the citizens are dressed in what's left of old Earth clothing. You can actually catch a glimpse in the version of video that was shared during E3 2014, edited below by YouTube channel VSN. So it would have been more like Fallout 4 style settlement building kind of thing.
Maybe. And that's not to say it was good. So was this like data mined, or did they just look at console?
No, it's from the book Art of Anthem
Oh.
that showed references. This is a PC gamer
Oh,
saying.
then did they talk about it like we originally were thinking about doing this, and
Mhm.
here's some concept art of that, but we didn't for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of watched like a review that talked more about the story, and it honestly doesn't seem all that interesting. It seems so boring. It's just sad. The world looks okay. I don't want to say interesting. It piques my interest, but I wouldn't say it piques my interest that much.
Yeah. And of course, the big news out of GDC so far this week, earlier this week, and we're on Wednesday, so we're halfway there. It's Google Stadia. Finally, Google is doing something.
It's throwing their hat into the ring,
Yeah.
and that's the name
Well,
that they
yeah.
decided to go with, is Stadia.
We're going with it. I guess it's Stadia for Stadium, but
Mm-hmm.
I guess you get to play and or watch. Uh, Inside Gaming had a video about this, which showed a lot of features potential for streaming. So I guess if Stadia works, they want to link it to YouTube Red particularly and their streaming platform, because clearly they don't want to do it on Twitch.
Yeah.
That's not gonna be that. So that could be a real competition for Twitch, and which we're now on right now, Twitch. So yeah.
Oh,
So yeah,
maybe it's a good thing I stream on YouTube, just in case.
Yeah, and well, the thing about it is that it's on demand online streaming service. With the controller has a streaming button. You can have window on window. You can have a lot of features, but here's the rub. According to Google, they do have the capacity to do up to between 60 to 120 FPS on most of the streaming games, and not all of them. And the new Doom game has been announced, going to be on Stadia and stuff like that. I don't know exactly, and you also can stream it on any hardware. And by hardware, they mean like cell phones and TVs and your PC as well. I don't know if they'll be allowed to be on Xbox and Switch and stuff like that. Particularly, go ahead.
I can see, Microsoft being, let's hook up with them and see if we can, oh my God, the teraflops image, really? Like no one knows what the hell a teraflop is. Or
10 teraflops.
Yeah. It's like, let's measure things back in bits again. But what I was saying is I can see Microsoft being like, hey, we're trying to get our games and stuff on everything imaginable. It's like, let's go ahead and do that too with Stadia. Like I can see it. It's only a matter of time before they start partnering up.
Well, the thing is that Microsoft also has its own streaming service. They also have Xbox Live, which is the thing that they have, right? That's the biggest thing they have right now. So it might be more of a direct competition than anything else. And Sony has its own streaming service. Everybody has their streaming service, but none of them have become really popular. And there's one reason for it. Talking about Microsoft, and this is from, again, PC Gamer. Microsoft says the FCC broadband report overstates high-speed availability. Microsoft broadband usage numbers don't align with the FCC. So, on one hand, the technology on the server side and cloud and all that, Google certainly has it.
Mm-hmm.
But
the infrastructure
is not there. For people who are too young in our audience to remember anything past this century, because we're in the 21st century, in the last decade of the 20th century, 1990s, well, there was a thing called the tech bubble. And the tech bubble was driven by the internet superhighway. But back then, it was all dial-up. Back then, also... Beep, beep, beep,
girl. Beep, beep. Yeah. I remember those days.
And I also used to pay $25 for internet hookup back then. But, things change. And the thing is that there were a lot of promises that were made about all the things you could do on the internet. But it so happens that the companies that became more successful, like eBay and Amazon, were the ones who required the least amount of infrastructure to deliver their products, which mostly were stores. You can buy stuff. And everyone else who's promising high-speed video and all that, well, they crashed and burned because On
Yeah.
dial-up, you couldn't do that. Even in early 2000s, it was kind of hard to do that. It took a while for stuff like YouTube
Yeah,
to really take off. So,
I don't I live in like a probably what one of the fifth ish. It's in the top 10 largest cities in Arizona and in the United States, and it's like um from I don't think I got high speed internet. At least my family didn't buy into it until like mid 2000s maybe, and
here's
that's
the and link to the
yeah.
report we're talking about. So you guys,
And I was still using dial up until like maybe 2003, 2004. No, I'm probably a little earlier than that. We stopped using dial up, but even then it was still kind of a struggle to get them to pay for like cable internet. And of course we still have another thing is DSL, which is my understanding it's kind of somewhere in between dial up and high and cable internet. It's not all that great as essentially, and we still have that out here, but we don't have like fiber out here.
yeah.
Some places are going to start getting it, but in my neighborhood, that's probably not going to. We'd be lucky if that's within 20 years.
Yeah. And let's look at some of the numbers here. It's very interesting. What the FCC calls high-speed internet is 25 MPS megabits downstream and 3 megabits upstream. I'm operating at 100, and I think it's 100, and I still am at 25 on upstream, but about 100. So it's 3 times that. And sometimes I have problems, especially streaming and stuff like that. So yeah, that's not ideal.
Yeah,
Especially if you're going to launch a massive,
internet hungry
streaming service. And also, Microsoft is supposedly planning to do a diskless, system.
Yeah, and while that's not going to be streaming, you still need the infrastructure to download a large game, up to like maybe around 60, maybe even 100 gigabytes in a reasonable amount of time. You don't want to have to buy a game and wait like a week before it's fully downloaded and you can launch it. And so my understanding, so this Google Stadia, so it's a stream box essentially, right?
Yeah.
Correct? And you're going to have to buy the hardware and subscribe to some sort of service that lets you buy games. That'd be weird. You have to subscribe to a service to buy games, and then of course it's being streamed, so the actual processing and stuff is happening off site on some server side, and it's just downloading the video and you're controlling it from it.
Yeah.
So it's one of haven't we been here before with like the stream box and the Alienware?
And
I'm not sure about
online. Remember
yeah,
online?
I mean, Sony's been trying to dabble with this with the Vita.
Yeah, certainly we have been here before.
I mean, it's not to say that they maybe Google will be successful, but I feel like the cards are kind of stacked against them right now.
Yeah.
At least from where I'm sitting here in Arizona.
Unless they're making a major push to try to get their Google Fiber.
Yeah, and of course Google's been trying to, but I think the biggest thing, especially here where I live, is that sort of the two big competitors, again, DSL and cable internet, they're pretty much a monopoly, and they're going to try to keep it that way.
Yeah, and there's also a question of
like
how much a public...
a duopoly. Yeah, a duopoly. They're kind of more of a duopoly.
Yeah, we have a kind of similar situation here. So, yeah, it's with the phone company / cable company.
And the only thing I kind of feel like the only thing that might help is definitely public pushback, but I don't think my community is all that educated, at least for the most part. I think there's a reason why most of the push for Google Fiber and likely where it's going to happen is going to be near our major university in the city.
Yeah.
And that's quite a bit away from where I live.
Yeah. In fact, there's also being a push for public internet for a
Mm-hmm.
much higher speed, especially wireless. But telecoms have been blocking that because they don't make any
Yeah.
money out of that.
And of
So,
course, I'm sure conservatives would be like, that's socialism.
yeah. Which brings us to politics, which is kind of an awkward transition to our, because we don't really have any more news to talk about, of today's topic. And today's topic is going to be, yet again, we're going to talk about politics and video games. But this time around, we're going to talk it from the point of view of particularly the publishers. This comes by way of Jim Sterling's video on the subject. About apolitical or attempts at being apolitical. And I'm gonna see if I can find it. Jim Sterling, apolitical game companies. Let's see if I can get the connection here. Yes, he calls it the exploitation of apolitical companies. Let's mute that so that I'm gonna. Ooh, wow, that's a hard hit right there. And let me give you the link so you can watch it yourselves, so that you don't say that we're just, misappropriating his words. But essentially, in the video, and that sort of piqued my interest, so I wanted to talk about that with Chabomon and you today, is that you have increasingly a number of video game companies claiming that their essentially very political games are apolitical. I know we don't have a political position in anything, like say the Division 2, which is about a war on the streets of the capital of the United States of America, the district, Washington D.C., and also known as Washington District of Columbia, and your first objective is to secure the White House or the remnants thereof, but not political, no
Mm-hmm.
politics, right? Same thing they said about this is Ubisoft. The same thing about Far Cry 5. A basically a civil war in a what was it Wyoming or somewhere in the west in the Rockies, in a county against a hippie cult that believes in the end of the apocalypse, and the gun-toting local residents who are known as preppers because they are survivalists who think their world is about to end, and so they're prepping for that. Lots of political commentary because I play that game, but the game is apolitical, right? I mean, we can just go down the list of games that are chock full of political content, and some people make the joke of like, well, does that mean that Super Mario Brothers is about an illegal Italian alien meddling in the affairs of a absolute monarchy? It was like,
Yeah.
I guess,
Essentially caught in the middle of a war
yeah,
between two kingdoms.
yeah,
One is trying to annex the other and force the royalty of the one kingdom into an arranged marriage to
yeah.
unite both kingdoms.
Mm-hmm. Uh, and the answer is that maybe you can see it that way because again, politics, like many things, permeate everything that we do. But the question is why these companies and these spokespeople are saying these things when clearly their games have political stances. Might not be the preferred stance of anybody in particular, of course, but they clearly talk about politics and they use history and political situations in their games. So why are they taking this stance? Do you have any idea, Chapa One?
So I think it's like wanting to have their cake and eat it too. It's just like we want to make a statement, but we don't want to we want to make a statement, put an idea out there, get our point across, but at the same time, we don't want to stand behind it. We don't want to have to defend it, and we don't want to have to be held to it. We don't want to have a discussion. We just want to say something and not but be heard, but not actually have a discussion.
Yeah, and also I think they want to be free. Yeah, they want to be free of actions without consequences, right? They
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to say, "Oh, we're using these things, so we can use them freely." Deus Ex Human Revolution. I'm looking at you using, all these things, but we're not. We don't have any responsibility about how people might feel about it if they
Yeah.
agree or disagree or they pillar us or stuff like that.
It's especially, I think, when you have so much money and so much writing on a game, like profits wise, especially a big company like Ubisoft, who
Hmm.
has shareholders and stuff. It's like we want to make this game, but at the same time, we also don't want to potentially alienate an audience that might be willing to pay for this game and give us money.
Yeah, I mean, and that's I think it's very true. They don't want to get pillared, but
Yeah, and especially if it's like someone who might have an issue with the message, but would still otherwise enjoy the game.
yeah. Um, but again, you make choices. If, for example, I mean, I'm going to bring out an old game from the 1980s, Operation Wolf. You're a special forces guy who's going to go into Latin America to save some hostages, right? And your enemies are stereotypical, Latin American military guys, right? You're kind of making a statement about people in a generic Latin American country taking Americans hostages. I think was based on up and the in the invasion of Grenada, and who the good guys are and who the bad guys are because you play the special ops guy, right? So
Oh wow.
the
Uh,
Americans are the heroes, right? And these people are clearly the bad guys because among other things they take American hostages, right? So it's like yes, you're making a political statement.
wow. I've never heard of this guy. I'm looking at the cover. I'm not entirely sure if the person on the cover is supposed to be the good guy or bad guy, but I'm gonna assume it's
Uh,
the bad guy holding a gun and carrying a white guy on his shoulder like he's holding him hostage. I mean, I could be misinterpreting
no,
enough to be
actually, that's
like,
supposed to be the hero
oh, okay,
rescuing
well,
rescuing the hostages.
oh, so the hero's dark skin, so it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay if the dark skinned person's killing the other dark skinned person. No racism there.
Yeah. Well, I think
We,
he's supposed to be tanned, rather. He's
oh,
supposed to be white because there's more images, and he's a white dude who is basically tanned because he's a
it's,
soldier.
it's sort of like the racism
Yeah.
accusation when it came to Resident Evil 5.
Mhm.
No, not 5, 4. No, it is 5.
Yeah.
The where you have the partner and then it's like, oh, you're playing as a white American person killing a bunch of African people, but it's okay. You have a half black partner.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, oh, people are like, this doesn't make a sense. It's like, well, again, you are being a zombie is seen mostly as a disease that make people go crazy. And oh, by the way, it's we talked about this many moons ago about African villagers getting infected with being zombies and becoming crazy. Let me see if is there a history
A,
about
a,
people
a real world parallel,
yeah, where
maybe.
people have said things about Central Africans and people in the tropics as being wild and monstrous and bloodthirsty and over
And being plagued by a disease
and
that's
play disease
killing
and
communities.
poisonous and lecherous because they also want to have sex, where the white women at and all that. Oh, I don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, right? I made a video many moons ago, also a very similar situation with Mass Effect 2, where the unfortunate situation with one character whose father ended up in a jungle planet who did, committed, who was African American or Afro Canadian, I suppose. Is the designers are Canadian, and decided to set up a harem. They never say sex and they never say rape in that particular section, but yeah, he spent 10 years essentially brainwashing his fellow men to serve as his own personal guard and raping the women, in his crew. So
Yeah, so it's there could be a lot of things that you can read into it, like say the Resident Evil thing, and that could be just it's not them necessarily making a political statement. It could just be born out of ignorance and carelessness of them just putting a product but not being quite aware. And at the same time, you kind of, if it's something, I'm not sure how race relations are in Canada per se, but let's assume that they have no race problems whatsoever. Everyone goes hand in hand.
yeah,
That doesn't mean that it's like that everywhere else, especially when your product is being marketed, primarily to the United States and a Western audience as a whole,
yeah,
and even globally. You gotta kind of keep that in mind. And at the same time, on the other hand, you can't. At the same time, you kind of can't be, I guess, knowledgeable about every single like cultural thing.
true.
at the same time, because I mean, what maybe we see something innocuous, but maybe somebody in the Middle East might see the same product and see something that we've never experienced in terms of political tensions or social rights issues that they face in their part of the world, and might be offended or might think that the creators are taking a stand when they weren't originally.
Yeah, and now I'm thinking maybe I'll have to change the title of this podcast because it smacks of certain sort of the defense, especially from writers, of the death of the author, right? Concentrate on whatever is over there. I'm not responsible. I just made it, and that's it. And my involvement ends when it was made, and then stands on its own. One could go to the death of the game designer,
Yeah.
except that, as we talked many times before, especially now in the bigger games that require you to be constantly engaged with the game, there's a constant hype and selling of the game. And part of that is the themes, ideas, good guys and bad guys. The role that you play, particularly in a video game, is very important as a good guy, right? Whether you're a special ops guy or a marine or an explorer or an astronaut or whatever. Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? Often, for example, the bad guys are corporations. What was the game that it was a re-release? Well, not release, like a remake, which is a lot about parkour. And one of the bad guys of the rival corporation was modeled at the current EA president. What's her?
Was it Mirror's Edge?
Yeah, Mirror's Edge. Yeah, Mirror's Edge 2, when it came out, the apparently the main bad guy looks like and is modeled after the president of EA. So that's both a personal statement as well as a political statement about corporations and how they mistreat people and exploit people in a cyberpunk game. Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe it was just supposed to be like a cute, innocuous Easter egg.
Yeah.
That it was supposed to be a tribute, maybe, but it's like, it's the villain.
But I mean, if you make a cyberpunk game, the fact that it has punk in it in cyberpunk has always been very political, right? You can't, again, going back to Deus Ex Deus Ex as a whole, especially Deus Ex Human Revolution and Mankind Divided, you are making some statements. Now, you could try to, play like, well, we try to see all sides the same. And often what tends to happen in games, and they're very gray, where there's no real good guys and bad guys because nobody wants to take a stand, right? Designers don't want to really make a moral stand, because they don't want to be accused of playing politics. So the story comes out of very sort of wishy-washy, because like, well, yes, we're killing these people by boatloads, but by the way, there's some of the bad guys are not really, really bad. They're just misunderstood. But, we could see all sides and all of that. Like, I was playing Ace Combat 7, and it's political. It's as in, war is bad. You're flying these cool jets and shooting down all the cool jets, but really, at the end of the day, mechanization and excessive mechanization and reliance on technology and war is bad. And that's sort of the final message. If that doesn't get more political than that, and I think my take on it is, for the same reason I don't like the idea of the death of the author in books, at least when we talk about living authors, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the idea of sort of death of the designer or death of the developer, because it's like, okay, you might not know about these things. That doesn't mean that it's not there, or that is not a point of critique, or that you're not making a statement, whether you meant it or not, and therefore you should be available and be able to defend your product, right? The GTA 5 had like that, all of that as well, right? They're like, oh, we're not really politics, except we're making fun of everyone, everything, and it's all political and socio-economic commentary.
Isn't there like one of their games has a statue of Hillary Clinton as like the Statue of Liberty or something?
Yeah, I don't remember which one is that, but yeah,
I want to say it was San Andreas, maybe. I don't know, but yeah. So I don't understand, why is it so hard? Well, again, it comes down to bottom line, money, and not wanting to offend a global market. But as an artist, I'd be like, oh wow, like, first off, someone's like reading into something that they enjoyed, or maybe didn't even enjoy, but they're consuming something I created and finding meaning. I would find that interesting personally. It'd be like, oh, I didn't intend it that way, but now that you're making arguments, I see your point. Or like, oh wow, like I've never heard of this uh insert whatever thing they've read into it, or this problem that maybe I've never been aware of, and then kind of understand it, be like, huh, that's let me contemplate that. Like, let me think about that. That's interesting. I honestly like that's what I think that's what a good artist would do, but at the same time, this isn't just art for art's sake. This is manufactured art, like corporate art,
Yeah.
for money.
I mean, also the thing is that with more and more games, or the entire industry embracing the idea of storytelling and video games as a narrative device, right? As a narrative, a way to deliver narrative. Narratives have ideas. They have concepts, and if
At least
again,
good ones.
well, whether you want them or not, they're good or bad ones, right? If you, for example, I don't know, have a situation where you execute some prisoners, right? That's a statement, right? Or not. Or you have a torture scene, or not. I mean, I remember
Like
GTA 5 had like a prolonged torture scene, and the message is, and they have the person who's the worst of the trio of bad guys essentially say, this is shitty, but I have to do it anyway. Yeah, that's a pretty strong statement on torture, especially in the 2000s, or in the war on terror and the Bush years and all that. And you can't just turn around and say, oh, this is not political. Yeah, it is. Now, sometimes, well, often enough, one, like you said, people can make something. It's like, well, I didn't intend to this. A dog licking itself is just a dog licking itself, right? It's not, the dog doesn't care, about your politics. It's just a thing that happens, right? Only people that might be offended might be cat lovers who don't want to see a dog licking itself because it's gross to them or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, sometimes that happens, but you have to at least have the gumption to go like, hey, listen, we know what we made. We know what we made it. This is what we're going to do. I mean, it's EA, for example, saying, "Oh, this is a game that will shock your." What was the game that it was like?
That was it was one of the, I think, Dead Space ones, or maybe
Dead
even
Space 2.
Dante's Inferno.
Both Dante Inferno and Dead Space 2 had commercials by EA saying, "Oh, this is a game that your grandmother would not like you to play, or whatever. It's going to shock them, right?" That too is kind of a political statement. And it's also a political statement about video games and violence in video games.
Yeah,
right?
and it's also making a statement about mothers and religious. It's making stereotypes too. So it's making you think like, oh, women don't understand video games. Mothers couldn't understand video games, like, or understand violence in video games. Or with Dante's Inferno, like, ooh, like religious people would not ever play this game and find horrible things, even though it's based on like some weird, essentially Bible fanfic that's somehow become canon, Dante's Inferno. And so, and that's also kind of the flip side of it is when do you kind of say, I'll play devil's advocate, when do you say that like maybe the audience or people are making too much of something in terms of like a political statement, especially when it comes to when maybe an artist doesn't want to make a political statement but does want to bring social issues to an audience attention. I mean, I guess that's a way also kind of making a political statement, but does it have to be political to make like social statements?
Well, you make a social statement and don't engage the political dimension of the social statement, for good or for ill. Your social statement is at the very best a dud.
It's bringing up an argument but not coming up with a solution, or at least trying to, or make like, this is what we should probably do. It may not be good or right, but this is the idea I put forth.
Like, oh, we believe that slavery is bad. Okay, well, why is it bad? What's the context within your game that makes it bad, and why do we
how do we change it within our fictional government as they kind of turn to look at the camera like, slavery is bad. We shouldn't have institutionalized slavery.
Yeah, why is it? I mean, sometimes, here's the thing. I think it's a matter of saying, listen, this is what we've done. and being just straightforward. We did this. This is what we think about it. We're willing to debate it or not, or engage with it or not. That's fine. I mean, after all, you don't want to just having an endless debate about whether or not, again, the dog is licking itself. But the dog is licking itself. It's there. You put it there, and if somebody goes like, "Oh, that's a minor point. I'm not going to discuss it." But if you're dealing, especially with current day events, at some point you're gonna go. You're again what Jim Shirley says about exploitation. You're exploiting the ideas and the emotional reaction to them for for engagement purposes. But when people go like, okay, so what are you really trying to say here? You're like, well, we're not trying to say anything.
It's an allegory for lust and gluttony and excess. The dog licking his balls.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can have the sort of failed professor slash 10th grade English teacher who's like, I wish I was in academia right now, but I'm teaching these idiots,
or
right?
I'm looking at this title or the cover again, going back to the cover of this Operation Wolf's like, it's homoeroticism. It's a guy saving his white boyfriend. Because I'm surprised that's not like a soldier holding some blonde chick on his shoulders. He's shooting this gun. Yeah. I don't know. This game is progressive.
Yeah, I mean,
based on the cover itself,
and that also means that not every interpretation is either correct or factually based. But if you don't engage in the conversation, or at least acknowledge the conversation is happening, you can't dismiss it. So you're trying to have it. You're setting up a situation where you have a conversation in a vacuum. Anybody can say anything about your game, but because you're unwilling to engage with it, listen, fine. No, we didn't mean this for be homoerotic, or maybe we're meant to be homoerotic.
An interracial couple, one trying to save his partner from, I guess, the Central American,
extreme right wing politics who wants to kill all gays or something at this point. Which
there you go.
Yeah, I mean but on the other hand, you also have, for example, we talked about this before about companies engaging in diversity politics. Oh, this character is gay, or this character has a boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, or this character is trans. It's like, again, you're making statements about your characters, your worlds that are. Shouldn't be, I guess, in my position, wouldn't be controversial, but you're still making those statements. Those statements don't, it doesn't, we talk about woke companies doing this before, right? And so you are making these statements. You can't turn around and say,
no, we're not trying to make a statement while making a statement.
I said a thing, but I didn't mean anything by it. Basically, that's what it boils down. I said a thing, but I didn't mean anything by it. I didn't mean anything by it. It's like, it's like your crazy uncle and Thanksgiving dinner going like, yeah, those people, whoever those people are, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, and you call them out, it's like, well, I didn't mean anything by it. It's like, but you just said a whole bunch of horrible things about these people who don't even know, but they sound very political to me, right? So there, it's a thing that happens. And I think ultimately is the corporate structure doesn't want to get into, they want to have complete control of the message.
Yeah.
And part of that tool is trying to decide when and where the conversation happens. They want to be political when it conveniences
exactly,
and when it doesn't. So yeah.
And which is funny because you brought up the example when it comes to the division taking place in Washington D.C. I kind of think what you're describing sort of reminded me of Fallout 3, and I don't think there was ever talk about any kind of taking place in Washington D.C. and what's the there's some politics going on here. I'm sure there is. You can probably read into it. I didn't honestly ever think too much of it. It just happens to take place in Washington D.C. and Bethesda probably just wanted to have the White House look all destroyed and all these American monuments destroyed just because they thought it would look neat. But I'm sure if you look into computer logs and stuff, there's probably some political undertones in there. I just find it interesting that no one's ever discussing that when it comes to Fallout as much as say the Division right now. Do you think it might be an audience perception? Maybe we're more aware of it.
I think it's more aware of it because again, because on one area the companies are trying to be woke and trying to do more politics, and then in others they're not so much. I mean, Fallout, the entirety of Fallout is extremely political, because one of the things, if you read a lot of the text really in Fallout 3, for example, the criticism of America, especially the sort of idealized version of 1950s, is all over the place, right? It's
Yeah.
the America of Fallout before the bombs is an insane, extreme place
Hmm.
where the
You know,
government is authoritarian, even though it claims to be, freedom loving. There's like, oh, there's an office, and they installed like automated defenses on this office, like literally, guns that come out of the ceiling and kill people, right? Because we're at war, and of course these offices require automatic, machine guns to be placed in these things, right? Stuff like that, right? So there's a lot of commentary. Um, Whether or not that translates to the world in which Fallout 3 came out, I think in 2007, 2008, I think was when Fallout came out. I think earlier.
yeah, something like that.
Okay, Fallout 3.
It's but
Yeah, it
it's
came out in October 2008, right? Whether it applies to the politics of 2008
mhm.
or not, that's up for discussion. And like I said, there
Yeah.
is a chance that you can completely whiff it, right? You can go like, oh yeah, it has to be this, and you miss the shot. But it's part of the conversation, and putting yourself. I think that's going to be my final take on this. Putting
Yeah.
yourself in, it's like, oh, this is not political when it's convenient for you, the publisher, right? And by way of the publisher putting pressure on developers who probably wanted to make a statement, but good, bad, or indifferent, and you don't have to agree with a statement, by the way, or the statements, obligated to, is hypocritical to say the very least, right? And it's just manipulative in a way that I certainly don't agree with. And also, we have to dispel the idea that video games are sort of this sort of thing that is out there and is completely unconnected to society, even as if it's clearly a reflection of our society and what we do. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And honestly, it's like I kind of wonder if like we as gamers and audience maybe in general, or maybe just a little more aware and more critical. I guess not
yeah,
just not so much critical in terms of whether politics should be there or not. It's so much that we're like, we're using our brains, we're thinking about it, and like, we should think about these issues. I would like to think that. I'm sure most of us are, and then a lot of you got the opposite, where it's like, oh, keep video games out of my power fantasy because I don't want to have to think about it. They're
yeah,
the Sarahs. Since I'm playing Inquisition, they're like the Sarahs of the
yeah,
Inquisition.
yeah. That's true enough. I think that's going to be the final word on that. Well, for a while now, probably going to go back to it in the future, because it almost always comes back. So, Chapman, where can we find you on the interwebs?
You can find me at Chapelmon pretty much everywhere on the internet. I am Chapelmon_Aragon on Twitch and Twitter, and I am primarily hang out on YouTube as just Chapelmon. I'm currently streaming Inquisition. Um, I'm playing mostly on Thursdays. I streamed earlier today. I'll see if I'll stream later. Depends on how the day goes.
And of course, you can find me here on Lesson Learn 1, which is the one is very important. I'm streaming right now Bayonetta, and I will, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, we'll be streaming Sekiro Shadows Die Twice on Friday, probably Friday evening, and then I will be streaming all next week until I finish it. If you want to see me try something and fail, and try again and fail, and scream at your screen as I do stupid things while streaming it, you're more than welcome to watch. So thank you everybody for coming. We will be putting this podcast on my YouTube channel, Lessons Learned, so you can catch up as well. It'll also be on the VODs. So thank you everybody for coming, and as always, we'll see you when we see you. Bye bye everybody.
Bye.